It was my turn to do the night shift, and I really wanted to go home and run into my bed. But I knew that if I didn't do my shift properly, my boss would fire me. The night shift scared everyone for some odd reason, including my boss, and I couldn't wrap my head around it. What could possibly be so horrifying about working at night? Well, I had no more time to question the unthinkable, otherwise, my job would be on the line. I got to work by grabbing the broomstick and started sweeping the dusty tiles, hoping that my shift could magically go faster. Engrossed with the task at hand, I didn't notice at first the whistling sound of the wind. Now, I've heard all kinds of sounds from my camping trips: the wailing cries of a cat, the hungry howls of a wolf, the glooming sound of crickets, but this was a sound I had never experienced before, a sound that rocked me to my core and sent shivers down my spine. Beads of sweat trickled down my skin, the sounds of my heavy breaths being the only sound I could hear through the blood pumping in my veins. I couldn't make out the inevitable screeches from the distance, but I had no business in wanting to find out what it was. As if by coincidence, the light bulb fused and started fizzling out, leaving me in the dark with my own thoughts. The malevolent energy became increasingly obvious, a nightmare that was awaiting to return in real life. I finally understood the reasons why my family and friends did not want me to work in this factory. I realized why my coworkers wanted nothing to do with the night shift. "Is anybody there?" I called out, hoping that my mind was playing tricks with me and this entire shift was an entire sick joke. In that moment, a blood-curdling scream roared behind me, and I could feel the color in my face drown. Reluctantly, I turned around to find the source of that uncanny voice. To my despicable demise, I recognized the face, the hollow eyes, the thin groveled lips, the heightened cheekbones, and, most importantly, the sickly grease that engulfed the entire circumference of his hair. The figures in my nightmares had returned, in the form of my boss, Jeffrey. "Boss? What are you doing, Dash? Do not move!" he screamed. "One more inch and you'll be gone." Gone. Before I could respond to his profanities, I noticed a large dent that took over half of the floor. Suddenly, the floor collapsed beneath me and I fell to my death, my screams inaudible from the screeches that returned in the wind. I woke up yet again to the sound of the wind, my broomstick broken on impact from where I slept on the floor. Was it a dream? No, I've had hallucinations before, but never like this. My nightmares have never been so vile, so horrifying, yet tonight proved otherwise. The eeriness of the cold night wounded down as I finished the rest of my shift, wanting nothing to do with this night shift again. Would I ever find out the truth behind my boss appearance in my nightmares? That is a question I dare myself not to ask, as it seemed fitting to not question the unnatural and the witchery of what I had experienced on this particular night shift. 2 days later, and I was given the task of running the night shift yet again. God was clearly not on my side for the inevitable, and I could not speak about the endearing nightmares that have since returned from my previous terrifying encounter. Again, I had no choice as my job would be on the line, and no one, especially Jeffrey, would have any business in engaging in the unspeakable events that occur at nighttime in this factory. I could tell from everyone's faces this morning that they had their own suspicions on what happened that night. The underbags of my eyes and my tousled hair from sleepless nights spoke enough. The entire day went through a blur as the night shift rolled around. I blasted my music to the highest volume, thinking that I would be able to ignore the nightmares by paying no attention to the cold and eerie wind outside. Unfortunately, the lights flickered once again, and I couldn't avoid the unlawful energy that swamped through the entire factory. I felt that the hallucinations were getting the better of me, and the reenactment of my nightmares started once again. My heart pounded in my chest, and I felt the color of my face drown again. I couldn't avoid the inevitable. The monsters in my nightmares had one, the face of Jeffrey, who became more and more prominent to haunt my very being, started laughing like a maniac. I could feel my body shake in terror as he bellowed once again. "Do not move," he repeated over and over again, looming over the shadows on the walls. My stomach turned and my ears felt deaf as I continued to wallow in my own terror and fright. "What do you have against me? Answer me!" I screamed. I needed answers as to why this was happening to me. The manic creature laughed, mocking me for my disheveled appearance and my frightened stance. Deja vu kicked in as the floor beneath me disappeared, and I fell towards my doom. I woke up once again, not believing my eyes as I noticed the sunrise emerging from the sky. In the end, I had to quit for my own sake, and I never, ever wanted to return to that forsaken haunted factory again.
Story 2.
I worked the night shift at the call center as usual, having more work to do than most of the days I am in the office. The office, tucked away in a quiet corner of the city, hummed with the dim glow of computer screens and the soft clatter of keyboards. The night was usually uneventful until the calls started coming in. It began like any other night. The clock struck midnight, and my colleagues and I settled into our monotonous routines. But then, the phone at my desk rang, emitting an eerie, otherworldly hum that sent shivers down my spine. I couldn't pinpoint why, but something told me in my gut that this wasn't going to be a regular shift for me. I hesitated but picked up. "Hello?" I answered, my voice quivering. A whisper, cold as the grave, responded, "I need to speak to my wife. Tell her I'm okay." My heart raced as I listened to the voice on the other end. It was Andrew, who had died in a car crash last year. I stuttered, "But Andrew, you're not." Before I could finish, the line cut off. I blinked in disbelief. My coworkers had started receiving similar calls. Mark talked to his grandfather, who had passed away when he was just a child, while Lisa spoke to a woman who had drowned in a lake 5 years ago. With each call, our unease grew, and our skepticism waned. We had become a bridge between the living and the dead. Our job had transformed into something beyond our comprehension. As days passed since that unforgettable night at the Supernatural call center, the memory of Andrew's call continued to haunt me. It was a call that led to more questions than answers, and I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something sinister lurking in the shadows. One evening, as I was researching the unexplained phenomenon of our calls, I stumbled upon a news article that sent a shiver down my spine. It was about Andrew's death, and it revealed a shocking twist. According to the article, Andrew had died under mysterious circumstances, and his wife, Rebecca, had been the prime suspect. However, due to a lack of concrete evidence, the case had been closed, and Rebecca had been set free. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Andrew's voice from that call echoed in my mind, "Tell her I'm okay." The next day at the call center, I gathered my coworkers and shared my discovery. We couldn't ignore the possibility that Rebecca had played a sinister role in Andrew's death, and his spirit was reaching out for justice. Determined to uncover the truth, we began an investigation of our own. We contacted the police and shared our eerie experiences, hoping to shed light on the mysterious circumstances surrounding Andrew's passing. As we delved deeper, we discovered that Rebecca had a history of manipulating those around her. We interviewed friends and family members, and the more we dug, the more disturbing the picture became. It seemed she had a knack for ensnaring people in her web of deceit, including Andrew. One evening, as we continued our investigation, I received another call. This time, it was Rebecca herself. Her voice, dripping with venom, hissed through the phone, "You don't know what you're getting into. Stay away from my business." Her ominous warning only fueled our determination to uncover the truth. We dug deeper, and what we found was chilling. Andrew's death had indeed been a murder, and the evidence pointed squarely at Rebecca. It appeared she had staged it to look like an accident, but she hadn't counted on supernatural intervention from beyond the grave. With our evidence in hand, we handed our findings over to the authorities. The police reopened the case, and Rebecca was taken into custody. She vehemently denied any involvement in her husband's death, but the overwhelming evidence against her left her with little room to maneuver. As the trial unfolded, the full extent of Rebecca's malevolence became evident. She had concocted an elaborate plan to inherit Andrew's wealth, and his death was just the first step. The supernatural call center had unwittingly become a conduit for justice, with Andrew's spirit as the catalyst for Rebecca's downfall. Rebecca was eventually convicted of murder, and justice was served. Andrew's spirit, free from the torment of an unresolved death, found peace, and the supernatural calls to the center gradually ceased. As my co-workers and I returned to our routine, we couldn't help but reflect on the bizarre and chilling journey we had undertaken. Our call center had been a bridge between the living and the dead, and in the end, it had also become a bridge between justice and a malevolent force that had sought to evade it. It was a story none of us would ever forget, a tale of the supernatural and the sinister that had unfolded in the most unexpected of places.
Story 3.
In the heart of our industrial town, nestled among the towering chimneys and humming machinery, there stood a factory like no other. The Barton manufacturing plant was a place where whispers of the bizarre and the eerie echoed through the night. I had long accepted the peculiarities of the night shift. The creaking of ancient gears, the flickering lights, and the ghostly shadows had become routine. But one fateful night, as the clock struck midnight, something changed. The factory, bathed in an eerie blue glow from the massive machines, seemed different. The clinks and clanks of the assembly line took on a dissonant rhythm. My co-workers, usually chatty and cheerful, moved with a hauntingly robotic precision. Panic clawed at me as I realized I'd seen all of this before. A sense of déjà vu washed over me as the same events repeated themselves with alarming accuracy. I approached a co-worker and whispered, "Hey, have you noticed anything strange tonight?"
Please like and subscribe.
But his eyes held a vacant stare, and he mumbled the same response he had moments ago. It was as if time had folded in on itself. I was trapped in a nightmarish time loop. The factory's eerie ambience intensified with each repetition. I watched in horror as my co-workers met gruesome accidents, only to be perfectly fine in the next iteration. The machines seemed to have a malevolent intelligence, and they played their part in this sinister dance. Desperation led me to investigate the factory's history. I uncovered dusty records of a tragic accident from years ago, one that had claimed the lives of many workers. Rumors spoke of a vengeful spirit haunting the factory, seeking retribution for the lives lost. Searching over and over again, I didn't have any luck in finding the right one. Almost giving up, I stumbled across an old box, possibly an old-time machine box. I opened it to find the answers that I have been searching for. As I delved deeper into the mystery, I found an old photograph of a group of workers, including myself, from a bygone era. Fear gnawed at me as I realized I was trapped not only in a time loop, but also in the past, reliving the horrors of that fateful night over and over again. Determined to break the cycle, I decided to confront the malevolent spirit. Armed with ancient incantations and a burning desire to escape this living nightmare, I ventured into the darkest corners of the factory. The final iteration arrived, and I faced the evil spirit with courage I didn't know I possessed. The factory's ghastly machinery churned and groaned around us, as if echoing the spirit's malevolent energy. I clenched the ancient talisman I had found in my trembling hand, the one that was supposed to protect me from the spirit's influence. Sweat trickled down my forehead as the apparition materialized before me. It wore a twisted, spectral visage, reflecting the anger and despair that had consumed it for so long. "I won't let you harm anyone else," I said, my voice quivering but determined. The spirit let out a blood-curdling wail that reverberated through the factory. It lunged at me, and I held the talisman aloft, reciting the incantation I had painstakingly memorized. The words flowed from my lips, a mixture of fear and resolve. As the incantation continued, the spirit's ethereal form began to tremble. It writhed in agony, its features contorting in a grotesque display of torment. The factory's lights flickered wildly, casting eerie shadows across the floor. But I couldn't stop now. I pressed on, my heart pounding in my chest, beads of sweat soaking my brow. The spirit's howls grew louder, its form gradually dissolving into a swirling, black mist. With one final, ear-piercing scream, the spirit dissipated, vanishing into the ether. The factory fell silent, the oppressive atmosphere that had plagued it for so long lifting like a heavy fog. I stood there, panting, the talisman still clutched tightly in my hand. The eerie presence that had haunted this place was gone, and I had played a part in banishing it. It was a surreal feeling, a mixture of relief and disbelief, knowing that I had confronted the supernatural and emerged victorious. As I stepped out into the dawn's first light, I couldn't help but wonder about the fate of the spirits I had encountered that night. Had they found peace in the afterlife? Or were they forever trapped in the liminal space between this world and the next? One thing was certain, I had faced the unknown and survived. The scars of that night would stay with me, a constant reminder that even in the most ordinary of places, there could lurk extraordinary and disturbing forces. Time resumed its normal flow. The factory's eerie glow faded, and the night shift workers continued their tasks, unaware of the horrors that had transpired. I, however, felt the weight of my ordeal as I stepped into the dawn's first light, forever changed by the night I spent trapped in the time loop factory. As the factory resumed its regular operations, I realized that I had broken the cycle, but the scars of that night would stay with me forever. The memories of the time loop would haunt my dreams, a reminder that sometimes, even in the most mundane places, the line between reality and the unknown can blur into something truly disturbing.